The common message is very, very simple. We live in a world today that is crazy, and we need to make some changes in the world. But before you can change the world, you've got to change yourself. You got to start with yourself. You can't change the world unless you yourself have to do that change first.
Welcome to Hope to Recharge podcast. Thank you for joining me here again today. Every week we meet here to break the stigma around mental health and to bring you insight and inspiration and lots of practical tips from personal stories or professionals around the world that share how they turn their journey of mental health into healing or to thriving. Together we will break the stigma one story at a time. In mental health, together is always better. Thank you for joining me here today. I'm your host, Matana. Let's get started. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp.com, the leading online platform for therapy. You can access thousands of therapists one click away. Go check out BetterHelp.com/hope to recharge. Get 10% off your first month. Start your wellness now.
In this episode of the Hope to Recharge podcast, we welcome Ari Schonbrun. Ari was an employee at Cantor Fitzgerald, the Wall Street firm that occupied the top 5 floors of Tower 1 in the World Trade Center. He was on the 78th floor changing elevators when the first plane hit the tower. In the midst of the smoke and chaos, Ari found a fellow employee who was terribly burned, needed his help, and helped her walk down the 78 flights of stairs. Of the 662 Cantor employees on the upper floors in the World Trade Center that day, only 4 survived. Ari believes God was looking out for him that day. There were many large and small miracles, and if anything Ari knows is how that day ended up being a day of rebirth. Before 9/11, Ari was focused on all the wrong things. He cared about his job. He lost sight of what matters most in life. And after 9/11, Ari changed his life by putting his family first, volunteering, giving back to the community, and by speaking to groups of people around the country. Ari has been sharing and retelling his story worldwide to audiences since that day. And after repeated requests and testimonials to the power of his message, he decided to write a book. Miracles in Fate on 78 reveals the power of creating meaningful connections to transcend the differences that often polarize and divide us from one another. This special episode that focuses on the horrific events that transpired on 9/11 is a lesson in perseverance in rebuilding after catastrophe and not allowing challenging events to hold us back from moving forward. The Hope to Recharge podcast will be taking a break for the next couple of weeks and will resume recording in October. And now, the host for the Hope to Recharge podcast, Matana.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me here again today. We are giving a little segment in honor of the 20 years of 9/11 to 9/11, 20 years. And when I'm saying it, I'm actually shocked that it's 20 years. Today, I have a special guest that's going to share his personal story of surviving the 9/11 attack and what it was like before, in the day of, after, I would even say a few years after, the first year, then a few years later, then a decade later, then 20 years later. What has changed? How did life evolve? I don't know the full story. I heard very small bits and pieces about it.
It all started when somebody asked me if I could speak at a school dinner, like 6 weeks later, 6 weeks after 9/11.
Wow.
Yeah, they turned their whole theme into 9/11. They had 3 people. It was supposed to be a panel with a Q&A from the audience, and it turned out that each of us had to speak for like 15, 20 minutes. And I spoke for about 15 or 20 minutes. And then the next day, the dean of the school calls me up and asked me if I would talk to the high school kids, which I did. And then some kid taped it, and his mom listened to it. She worked for a nonprofit, and she called me and she said they're having their annual tea and would I speak? And then it just one thing led to the other. But I was always doing it part-time.
Right.
Because I actually worked for a living. About 4.5 years ago, I actually left Wall Street. I finally left Wall Street. I started doing this full time, which was great until COVID hit. And when COVID hit, my income went from whatever it was down to zero because there were no more conferences. There was, nobody was doing live things. Nobody needed speakers. At that point, I started my podcast. And I started what's called Whispers and Bricks, by the way. That's the name of the podcast, Whispers and Bricks. And then I started the Whispers and Bricks Academy, which is a coaching business where I help people with life coaching.
Like adversity, taking their adversity and working through it.
Correct.
And seeing the the bricks that are in the way, removing the bricks, right? And I guess it's finding the whispers within the bricks that they put in front of them.
Not exactly. The reason it's called Whispers and Bricks, it's because of a story that I tell at the end of my talk. The whispers are, what God talks to us when he talks to our minds and he talks to our hearts. He whispers those things. All right. Every so often you get a premonition or you think about something, right? Maybe I should do that. Maybe you do and maybe you don't. But those are God's whispers to you, telling you what you should really be doing. And most of us very often don't listen to it. And part of the reason they don't listen to it is because they're so busy running through life that they don't have time to listen to those things, right? They just figure, I don't have time to think about that. I've got a family. I've got to do, so many things. Whisper after whisper happens. And finally, God says, you know what? I've given you all the whispers I'm going to give you. And then all of a sudden, out of the clear blue, he hits you with a brick to wake you up.
Wow.
And he goes, wake up. Boom.
Wow. Wow.
Now, my brick was 9/11.
Right.
I mean, that was the brick that I got hit with. Okay.
That was one of your biggest bricks, that we would say, right?
That was my biggest brick in life.
Right. But you had many little pebbles and then stones. But then there was a brick, like the Western Wall brick, right? That you're just like, okay, I can't even move it. It's so big.
Right.
First, I want to hear what you were beforehand. Give me a little background. How many kids were you married? How many children do you have? Where did you live? What company did you work for? How many years were you there? All that before 9/11 hit. I want to hear a little bit about that.
It's not that exciting a life that I had. I basically had 2 jobs my whole life. All right. I worked for an Israeli bank for 10 years. Then I did a short stint at a commodity trading company for about 2 years. And then I went to work for a company by the name of Cantor Fitzgerald. And I worked there for 23 plus years.
And that's where you were working during 9/11.
That's where I was working during 9/11, right? I'm married. I have 5 children. 4 of them are married. One of them is 17 years old in high school, finishing his senior year in high school. I can't wait. I've got several grandchildren.
Beautiful.
Yes.
What was your position there?
So my position was, when I started at Cantor, I ran a department called the Business Administration Department. We basically monitored all the expenses of the firm. So if the firm was spending money on, let's say, entertainment, tickets for ball games and whatever you use in order to entertain clients, we were monitoring all of that. And I did that for several years. And then CFO of the company, who was actually the 3rd CFO that had been working there since I started. I started in 1993. And no, I missed the first bombing, because people ask me that. 93, were you there for the first bombing? No, I missed it, because the first bombing was in February of 93 and I started in October of 93. Wow. I lived through 3 CFOs. When the 3rd CFO showed up, he asked me if I would come into his group because they needed help with their accounts receivables. It was way out of whack, and they were taking a beating on it. He asked me if I would come and, help fix it, which I did. Ultimately, I did. And I did that until 9/11. After 9/11, it was just catch as catch can, because we had to rebuild the company. But we'll get to that.
Exactly. We'll get to that after.
We'll get to that later.
Okay,
right.
Great. Was it a 9 to 5 job, or was it more like 8 to 11 because it was corporate crazy? It was crazy then.
I don't think I ever worked 9 to 5.
Yeah.
My whole life.
Yeah.
It just didn't happen. 9 to 5 to me, that's a civil service job.
Right. Okay.
Okay. When you're in the corporate world, there's no such thing as 9 to 5. Especially if you're looking to climb the ladder.
Right.
So I was in the office at 8 o'clock in the morning. Very often I wouldn't get home till 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 even.
So never dinner with a family, never dinner.
No.
Besides Sundays, sometimes if there wasn't some kind of crunch of something or other that you needed to do.
Correct.
So Shabbat was your dream. You were Abba Shel Shabbat, as we call it.
Yeah.
Right. You come home for the weekend and try to catch up.
I used to get home about 15 minutes before Shabbat started.
Wow.
To work long hours. So you want the story?
I'm going to lead you into the story. Okay. So your normal day would be get up in the morning.
Yeah.
Go to synagogue.
Correct.
And it was Elul. And for the non-Jews that don't know what Elul is, it's the month right before the New Year's, our Jewish New Year's, and there's a special prayer that we say a week before New Year's. So you went to synagogue. Was it early in the morning, like 6 a.m., 5:30? What was your routine?
Yeah, it was 5:20. I used to leave my house at 20 to 7.
20 to
in the
7.
morning. I came home, grabbed my stuff, and I was leaving. I usually left the house at about 20 to 7 in the morning. And especially during this time of year, because the Jewish holidays all came out in the middle of the week, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
So Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, came out Tuesday and Wednesday. And then Yom Kippur came out on Thursday. And then the Sukkot came out Tuesday, Wednesday. Basically, for the next month, I was going to be working about 2 days a week.
So you had to do extra time, extra shift.
Right. I got into the office at 8 a.m. and I didn't get home usually during that time till about 11 p.m.
Wow.
Because I had to finish all my work.
Right.
I needed to do the work. That morning was no different.
Right.
It was 20 to 7 in the morning. I had my briefcase over my shoulder. I had my cup of coffee in my hands. I yelled out to my wife, bye, hon, love you, see ya. And I yelled up to my kids, bye, kids, have a great day in school. And I started to walk out the door.
And you go by train?
Yes, I took the train.
Okay.
As I'm walking out the door, my wife yells down to me and she says to me, did you do Baruch's book order? For those that don't know, I learned something very important. Teachers have a wonderful way of torturing parents. It's called the scholastic book order.
Yes.
Now, if you have kids,
you know
what that is.
And you're nodding right now, right? And you're nodding.
Yeah. She said, did you do Baruch's book order? I said, no, I didn't. She goes, you're not leaving the house until you do that book order. You have to understand something. My wife is a school principal. She runs a special ed department in a girls' yeshiva. She was just opening school and she was doing all the cooking and the cleaning, getting ready for the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
And she just didn't have the time or patience to work with my son.
Mm-hmm.
She said to me, you know what? It's your job. You have to do it with him. And I said, okay. The problem was I was also working crazy hours and I just didn't have the time to do it. So I put my briefcase down, put my cup of coffee down, walked into my kitchen to proceed to negotiate with my 8-year-old for the next 20 minutes.
Yes.
I whittled him down to 2 books.
Wow, good for you.
Interestingly enough, the 2 books that he picked were from a series called Survivor.
No way. I have goosebumps. Oh my God.
When those books showed up 2 weeks later, it was like chills down my spine.
Literally. Wow.
Very important. And you're going to see throughout my story, what's really important is a lot of coincidences happened during the course of that day. But when I looked back on it, I realized that God was just watching over me the entire day. Because miracle after miracle. Let's start with the first one. The book order was actually due on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
But my son left his pamphlet in school on Friday.
Wow.
So my wife wrote a note to the teacher asking her if he can have an extra day. And she said, of course. And she made sure to put the pamphlet into his knapsack so he would bring it home on Monday. If he would have brought that pamphlet home on Friday, I would have done his book order on Sunday. You right now would be interviewing somebody else because
you would get to the office earlier.
I would have been in my office at 8 o'clock in the morning and I would be dead. But because he left his pamphlet in school on Friday, I am here today to tell you my story.
Wow. Those are the whispers that you speak about, by the way, the little things that we take for granted. We don't even notice. And sometimes we even get upset about, oh my God, I missed the bus. Oh my God, I missed the train.
Oh,
and then
absolutely.
I had it today in the parking lot, exactly what you're saying. And I said, we have 2 choices. Somebody took a spot. And I said, it's not that it was mine and the person took it. God wanted to give it to him. And God's going to give me my spot because that's not my spot. It's just not my spot.
Correct. You're right.
And when we look at it that way, life is more
palatable.
It's more pampering. It's also more pampering because you know that it was not my spot. Now, it could be very aggravating when you're in a rush to a meeting and you can't find the spot and there's a full parking lot and you can't find. But then you can say, okay, it wasn't meant to be. It's not mine. I'm not going to be angry at that person.
Right.
I have a different spot. And there's a reason why.
Right. You know, that reminds me of the guy who's going for a meeting and he's running late and he's looking for a parking spot and can't find one. And he finally looks up and he says, God, please, if you just help me find a spot, you know, I promise I'll turn over a new leaf and I'll do XYZ, whatever it was. And then all of a sudden he sees a spot and he goes, you know what? Never mind. I found the spot.
It's sad, but it's so true. That's like the whole dynamic of, do we see God in our efforts and do we realize that our efforts are really God leading us? But we're going on a different path now, and we're let's go down. Let's understand how you got to the office and what happened.
That 20 minutes cost me 40 because the later you leave, you know, the worse the traffic, the worse everything.
Right.
And so I didn't get to the trade center until 20 minutes to 9. when normally I was there at 8 o'clock. Now, my office was on the 101st floor. You couldn't get up to the 101st floor with one elevator. In the lobby, there were these huge elevators, express, that went to 78. 78 was a sky lobby, and you got off at 78, and then the only thing on the floor were elevators, and you would change to take another elevator that would take you up to the higher floors. So the first elevator that came down was all the way on the right side of the lobby. So I ran down to the end of the lobby and I got into the elevator, get up to the 78th floor. And now the elevator that I need to get to my office is all the way on the left side of the sky lobby. So I got out of the elevator, hung a left, and started to walk to the bank of elevators. I must have been about 8 feet from those banks of elevators when, as best as I can describe, there was an explosion. I thought a bomb had gone off in the elevator. The lights went out, the place filled with smoke, the entire building shook, and I was literally thrown off my feet. And I was on the ground, and I heard people yelling, "Fire in the elevator," and I'm thinking to myself, of course there's a fire in the elevator, a bomb just went off in there. I didn't know. Nobody knew. We had no idea what happened.
And black, and all you could say is nothing. You can't see anything.
Yeah, it's a lot of smoke. And, we didn't know what happened. Remember, I was on the 78th floor. The plane hit 92, 93.
So it's 20 floors, like 8 to 17 floors down.
Okay, 15 floors above me. I mean, it was just, it was an incredible, to this day, I hear that explosion.
Right.
So.
And it happened that moment, right? The explosion happened as you walked out of the elevator on 78.
As I was walking towards the other bank of elevators.
Right. Which is what, like 3 seconds after you walked out of the elevator?
No, probably a little more. Probably, I don't know. It was you had to walk down the lobby.
Okay.
So I didn't know what to do. I'm looking around, trying to find a way out. I found an office. I opened the door to an office. There was an office there behind the elevator banks, which I never knew existed. There was a guy in there, was the fire warden for the floor. He was the, for your listeners who may not know, every floor in this big building had a person who was designated as the quote unquote fire warden. He was basically your go-to guy. If anything was happening,
emergency.
Right. So he had a special phone, management would call him. And I knew he was the fire warden because he had a silly red hat and it said fire warden on it. And I knew that because I had the same hat because I was the fire warden for my floor.
Oh, wow.
So I ran over to the guy and I said to him, "What do we do? Where do we go?" The guy looks at me and goes, "I don't know." Of course he didn't know. He didn't know what happened. The only thing we knew was a bomb went off. That's all we knew. We didn't know anything else.
How many people are like gathering? Do you see people or you have no idea?
No, I really didn't have an idea. I wasn't sure. But I went back into the hall to try and find a way out, and I bumped into a coworker of mine. Her name was Virginia DiChiara. Virginia was on the elevator that I was about to get on when the plane hit. And as she described it to me, when the plane hit, the doors were started to close and they jammed open about a foot. The walls of the elevator collapsed. The ceiling collapsed. The cable snapped, was sparking in the elevator. The jet fuel came down the sides of the elevator and was ignited by the spark, and there was a wall of fire.
How did she survive? How did she not die?
She jumped through the fire. Well, let me tell you something. There were 3 people in that elevator. There was Roy Bell, Virginia, and Renee. Roy Bell was the first one to jump through that fire, and he suffered 2nd-degree burns. Virginia jumped through next. She suffered 3rd-degree burns. And Renee, who was the last one out, she died from her burns.
Oh, my God.
So Virginia looks at me, she says to me, "Ari, please, whatever you do, help me. And whatever you do, please don't leave me." Now, here's irony. You ready for this?
Oh, my God.
Virginia and I were not good friends. She was an internal auditor, and she'd been hired the year before by Cantor, and the first department she audited was mine.
Oh, no.
And needless to say, she wanted to impress her superiors, so she didn't give me very good marks.
Oh, my God.
As a matter of fact, she almost got me fired.
Wow. Talk about humanity need to rise to occasion right there, right? In split seconds.
That's right.
You have to be a human and put everything aside.
I needed to make a decision. I could have run and said, "The heck with you, lady. I'm saving my own skin."
Wow.
But you know what? Here was another human being who was in trouble. And I was the guy that God put there. And literally, I looked at it as a test saying, like, okay, what are you going to do? And I did the only thing I knew how to do. And that was, I said to Virginia, "I promise I will not leave you and we will get out of here."
Was she bleeding? What did she look like?
She had 3rd-degree burns. Her clothes were burned. Her hair was singed.
Oh, my God.
She had she had 3rd-degree burns up and down her arm. She was a mess. She was an absolute mess. She couldn't, I took her into the office to before we figured out where we were going to go. And I literally gave her a plastic cup of water. She couldn't hold the cup.
Right.
All right. Because her hands were so badly burned. It was unbelievable.
How did you have a second to stop and go into office? Why were you not running at that point? Why were you not escaping, like just saying, let's just run, because you had no idea what was going on?
Where should I run? You got to remember something. This is a floor. The only thing I knew about this floor were elevators. I didn't know anything about stairwells or staircases. I didn't even know if there was a stairwell or a staircase until finally the fire warden said, okay, we can get out, stairwell on the left. Okay. And we walked out, and then that was the first time I actually looked up and I saw exit signs. And by the way, I look for those signs every time I walk into a big building because I never know when it may save my life, because it certainly did that day. So we went out. Now, here's the interesting point. We found the stairwell, and I looked inside and I saw there were lights on in the stairwell. Now, the lights had gone out when the plane hit, so I figured they're probably emergency lights. So I turned, there were about six, it was the fire warden, myself, Virginia, and Roy Bell, and about 6 or 8 other people that were with us. And I saw the lights. I figured they're emergency lights. So I turned around to the people behind me. I said, does anybody have a flashlight? Thinking, I don't know how long the emergency lights are going to stay on. And if they go out, remember, it's in the middle of the building, no windows or anything. It's going to be pitch black. So I said, does anybody have a flashlight? And believe it or not, 2 people turned around and go like, yeah, we have a flashlight.
No way.
Wait. And I remember thinking to myself,
who the heck?
Where did you get a flashlight from and why are you carrying it? It was just like, but I didn't care. I said, listen, folks, if the lights go out, nobody panic. We will have light.
At this point, you still don't know what went on. You think that just a elevator exploded from malfunction, not because something major went on.
No, well, I thought a bomb had gone off.
A bomb. Okay.
Right. I mean, just like in 93, a bomb,
right.
It was a bomb, right? So that's what I thought. I thought it was a bomb. We started to head down. Oh, the next thing I did was I looked at Virginia's feet and I said, thank God she's wearing flats, because there were high-heeled shoes in that stairwell all the way down.
Wow.
Women had just kicked them off to get down as fast as they could.
Right.
So we started to head down. We got down 3 flights. We got down to the 75th floor, when, as far as I'm concerned, one of the biggest miracles of the day happened, other than the fact that I wasn't killed when the plane hit. My cell phone rang. Now, most people think, so what? Well, back then, and in that building, you could never, ever get signal. Wow. I remember standing up in my office by my window going, hello, can you hear me now? Can you hear? Remember that commercial? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they filmed it in my office, okay? Because you can never get signal. And all of a sudden, on this day, I'm in the middle of the stairwell, in the middle of the building, and my phone rang. I picked up, I went, hello? It was my wife on the other end of that phone.
Oh, and she's telling you, and you don't even know what happened.
She was crying, and she was telling me something about a plane going into the building. I had no idea what she was talking about. I said to her, Joyce, I'm in a stairwell. I'm on the 75th floor. I'm on my way down. Now is not a good time. I said, I'll call you when I get out of the building, and I hung up the phone.
And you had no idea that she's calling to tell you what to see that you're alive from what she's about to tell you.
Correct.
Oh my.
We walked down 78 flights of stairs, and the fire warden was leading us the whole way. And when we got down on the first floor, he kept going down. And I said, where are you going? This is the first floor. He goes, we have to get out through the garage. So I turned to Virginia and I said, we just went down 78 flights of stairs. What's another 4 or 5? And we continue to go down. We got down 2 more flights.
Was she able to walk?
She was able to walk. She had no choice.
Right.
There was a point in time where she said, Ari, I can't go on. I can't do it anymore. And I told her, no, you can do this. All right. Because if she was going to stop and lay down, whatever it is, she was going to die. I mean, there was no doubt in my mind. So I needed her to keep moving.
Right.
So we got down 2 flights, and all of a sudden the door on the first floor opens up and some guy yells out, where are you people going? So I yelled back, we're going out through the garage. They said, no, you can't get out through the garage. You have to come back up here and come out through the first floor. So I turned to Virginia. I said, we got to go back up 2 flights. At that point, she said a few things that I can't say in mixed company or in any company. And we headed back. Now, here's the interesting thing. Who was the guy who opened the door? I have no idea, because I never saw him. I only heard a voice. And why did he pick that moment to open the door? I don't know. But that guy saved our lives that day. Why? Because what I found out later was there were people in that garage that never got out.
Wow. How long did it take you to go down the entire? Like, is it 10 minutes, 5 minutes?
No idea. Time for me had stopped. The first time I looked at my watch after it was the 20 to 9, when I saw it was 20 to 9, The next time I looked at my watch, it was 1:45 in the afternoon.
Wow, because you were running.
Because I was just doing, walking, running, moving. I was just, and so I have no idea about time at all. But we got out of the building. I told the cop I had a burn victim. He said, go across the street in front of the Millennium Hotel, setting up a triage center. And he said, ambulance will be there. And sure enough, I brought her across the street. An ambulance pulls up. We get her into the ambulance. And I breathe a sigh of relief. Because up until now, the only thing I can do is keep her spirits up, but I couldn't help her medically. Now she's finally getting medical attention. I breathe a sigh of relief. I step out of the ambulance. I turn around, look up at the buildings, turn to a guy who was standing next to me. I said, how did building 2 get on fire?
So you still don't know what happened. You still have no clue. You think
No.
it's a bomb that went up on the top
right.
floor.
And I knew that I knew why our building was on fire, because a bomb went off in the building. That's why there was a fire in our building.
Right.
But how did the fire get to the other building? I thought the wind had blown the fire from one building to the next. That's what I thought. And I said to him, how did building 2 get on fire? The guy looks at me and says to me, are you kidding? 2 jetliners went into the buildings. They're calling it a terrorist attack. I look at him like he's crazy. I said, what are you talking about? Now I'm running scared. I mean, before it was just a bomb in the building. Okay.
Wow.
I was really running scared. I was trying, Virginia asked me to get a hold of her mom, and, the cell phone wasn't working. I couldn't get a hold of anybody. But then it dawned on me that she's sitting in that ambulance, and they're sitting there. They're not going anywhere. So I turned to the driver. I said, why aren't you leaving? This poor girl, she's suffering terribly. And he said, we can't leave until we fill the ambulance. You see, we're expecting a huge amount of casualties. So we were told that we can't leave unless we have like 6, 7, 8 people in the ambulance. They wouldn't let Virginia lay down because they needed room for the other people.
So people weren't running crazy yet. It was still the calm before the storm.
No, people were running. Cops were telling everybody uptown, because remember, there's a fire raging right there. Stuff is still falling out the windows.
Okay.
So they tried to push everybody. So they finally filled the ambulance, and the guy goes, okay, we're ready to go. And all of a sudden, Virginia turns to me. She says to me, Ari, you're coming with us. Now, I don't want to say I was in a comfort zone because of what was going on, but the reality is I knew where I was. If I needed to get someplace else, I would know how to do that because I knew where I was. I knew, how to come and go. The thought of getting into that ambulance and going to God knows where didn't excite me. Besides, once she leaves, I'm going back to the building. There's no place else that I'm going other than back to the building.
To do what?
To look for my friends, to look for coworkers, to help.
To go back up? You would go back up?
Yeah.
How?
The same way the firefighters were going back up the stairs.
You were going to go back into the line
Yes, of course I was going to go back into the building.
Oh, my God.
So Virginia says to me, Ari, you're coming with us. I look at her, I said, Virginia, you don't need me anymore. I'm going to get a hold of your mom. She's going to meet you at the hospital. You're going to be okay. That was the mantra, by the way, all the way down the stairs. Mm-hmm. You're going to be okay.
Wow.
She turns to the ambulance driver and she says, we're not leaving unless he comes with us.
What do you think it was about?
She needed the security.
Right. She needed someone that she knew by her side.
Right.
Wow.
So the ambulance driver looks at me. I look at him. He finally says to me, okay, hop into the front. And I get into the front and we pull away. We're one of only a few ambulances that actually got away from the scene that day.
I have chills. So if she wouldn't insist, you would be goodbye.
I would be dead.
Dead.
If she wouldn't have insisted that I get into that ambulance, I would have been standing at the base of that building when it came down. I'd be dead. There's no doubt in my mind. None whatsoever.
Wow. When did it fall down? How?
She thanks me. She thanks me every day for saving her life. And I said, you got it all wrong. Who saved whose life?
I'm assuming you're best friends now.
We became very good friends. We did become very good friends.
Wow. So that was the last you saw of this, the last that you saw of the scene?
Yes and no. It's the last time that I saw it up close, because when we got to the hospital, and it's another whole story, but when we got to the hospital and they wouldn't let me stay in the hospital with her because I wasn't a relative, believe it or not. They asked me, who are you? I said, I'm a coworker. She goes, are you a relative? I go, no. They said, you can't stay. You have to leave. And they literally threw me out of the hospital. I felt so bad for her because, she was using me as a crutch the whole time.
Right.
I said, Virginia, I got to go. They're not letting me stay, but I promise I'll get a hold of your mom. She's going to meet you here and you're going to be okay. And then I walked out of the hospital. And when I got out, all of a sudden I heard somebody go, wow, did you hear? Tower 2 collapse.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God.
And from St. Vincent's Hospital, which was on 12th Street and 7th Avenue, you had a clear view straight down to the Trade Center, and Tower 2 was gone. All you saw was Tower 1. Now, when I saw that, I had a pit in my
Oh
stomach
my
like you wouldn't believe. I was so
God.
scared.
What do you do then? You just fall on the floor and collapse, like literally collapse.
No, how can I collapse? It's survival. Where am I collapsing? What happened was I needed a phone, right? I had to call my wife. I had to call her mom. So, I was looking for a payphone. That was the funniest thing.
Where was your phone? Wait, your phone was working in the towers?
The phone was dead. Oh, I forgot to tell you that part. The phone rang when I was in the stairwell, right? And after I hung up, Roy Bell said to me, "Oh my God, you got signal on your phone. Can I use your phone to call my wife?" I said, "Of course." I handed him my phone. He dialed. He hit send. Nothing. Dead.
Wow.
I literally looked up and I said, "Thank you, God." Because at
Wow.
that point, at least I knew that my wife knew that I was alive.
But then she didn't know afterwards because you never called to say the building collapsed. She doesn't hear from you. Your phone is dead. She's thinking, oh my God, Ari's gone. Ari's gone.
I'm dead. She lived through this twice.
Oh my God. So you're like, oh my God, I must call my wife. I must find a payphone. What time is it by now? Like, give me a time frame. 2 hours later, 3 hours, 1 hour, 20?
No, I don't know. I keep telling
No
you,
clue.
I don't know. No clue. All I know is that I went into a restaurant figuring they have a phone. They wouldn't let me use the phone. Or it said I have to wait for whatever.
They knew that. Did they know what was going on in this restaurant? They knew that the Twin Towers collapsed?
Look, I don't know who knew what. All I know is I think they must have known. I mean, how can they not know? But there were two guys sitting there and they were eating, I don't know, breakfast, lunch. I had no idea because I had no idea what time it is. And a guy says to me, my apartment's 5 doors down. You can come to my apartment and use my phone. And I'll never forget this. I was really scared.
Right.
Because this is New York City.
Exactly.
People don't just invite you up to use their phone in their apartments, right? And I'm thinking like, ex-murderer? And I'm going like, but I was desperate. And I said, yeah, thank you so much. We went up to his apartment. I actually got a hold of my wife finally. Tara wanted collapsed. She was crying.
Wow. She probably didn't believe that she's hearing your voice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Then it was a day of going from office to office. I finally wound up going to my brother's office up on 47th Street and 6th Avenue. Then we had to decide what we were going to do and where we were going to go. We heard there was limited subway service at that point in time. So we went downstairs and sure enough, there was I think the F train was running. So we took the F train. My brother wanted to take the E train to Penn Station. Not to Penn Station. Yeah, he wanted to take the E train to Jamaica and then try and get a railroad. And I said to him, he's crazy because it'll be a mob scene because everybody's going to be trying to get out. So, but anyway, the E train never came, but the F train came. We got on the F train and we went out to Queens, to Kew Gardens, where my mother-in-law was living at the time. It was funny because I had a friend of mine who owned a car service. And while this was going on during the course of the day, when I was calling different people from different offices, I called her and said, I know you can't send a car to get me in the city, but if I get out of the city, can you send me a car to take me home? And she said, of course, no problem. She gave me a special phone number, whatever. So we got to Queens. I called my mother-in-law and told her that we were downstairs from her apartment building because, first of all, I needed a familiar address for the car to pick us up. I didn't want to go upstairs in case the car shows up, but, and the car shows up and then decides to leave. Not in good shape. So my mother came down with 2 glasses and a pitcher of water for me and my brother. It was like really, really sweet. Ultimately, the car came. We got to my house. My brother, our cell phones were working. And my brother called his wife to tell her to meet us at my house. When I got to my house, there were 20 people in my living room. And I had no less than 100 phone messages. And I know that because back then, it wasn't digital. It was those little micro cassette tapes. Remember those?
Yes.
I still have it.
Wow.
I have nothing to play it on, but I still have it.
Wow.
And I learned something very important that day. You have no idea how many friends you really have until they all think you're dead.
I thought you were just telling me something inspiring right now. Oh my God. Oh my God. So you came home. That was the shortest day in the office. Like you didn't even make it into the office.
Right. I didn't get home I got home at 5:30.
Wow. It's the whole day to get home.
It was a whole day, yeah.
The whole day to get
affair. Yeah.
And you already heard that the second tower fell.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, when I went to that guy's apartment and I spoke to her, at that point I knew the second tower had come down. Well, the first tower had come down.
How many people survived from your office? Do you sometimes feel stuck? Do you wish you can be somewhere else? Do you have a vision of where you want to get to, but you just don't know what the first step to take in order to get to that life that you're dreaming of? Many people ask me, what did I do in order to create this wellness that I'm living in? How did I shift from deep depression, from extreme anxiety to a thriving life, to a productive life, to a life full of joy? I put many things into practice, and it's every single day. Many of you know that it's gratitude, a healthy mindset, boundaries, self-love, and one of the most important things that many people don't speak about, forgiveness. Self-forgiveness and forgiveness to others. Essential for healing. If you want to work one-on-one with me in order to move forward towards that dream life that you have a vision of, click the link below in the show notes. It's a custom-made program for you, one-on-one with me. We will develop a concrete program that you can implement in your life so you can create a better well-being. Click the link below. Looking forward to working with you. And now, enjoy the rest of the episode. How many people survived from your office?
If you were above the plane, you died. So everybody who was in 658 people died from my office.
How many?
658.
From your office?
Yes. We employed 960 people. 600.
2/3 died.
2/3 were killed.
2/3.
Murdered.
So that means they were all in the office early.
Yeah, well, they were brokers and salespeople.
So they come so early.
They got into the office 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
So they were all dead.
Wow.
They all died.
Did anybody like that? Anybody you know was on the way like you that survived?
Yeah, me, Virginia.
Yeah.
Harry Weiser, he has an amazing story because he was on the elevator. I don't remember which one. I don't remember if he was in the elevator going up to 101 or he was in the elevator going up to 78. I don't remember, but he was very severely burned. His lungs were burned.
Wow.
He was in an induced coma for 6 weeks.
Wow. Wait, how did he get down?
I don't know.
Miracles.
I don't know his whole story.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there were other people. So there were only like 4 or 5 of us actually on the upper floors that actually got away that day.
Unbelievable. So you come home, your mind is racing. You can't even process. Like you're in shock, literally in shock. You don't know. You keep on thinking, okay, who was in the office? Who died? Who survived? How are we gonna ever know? How are we gonna know?
Yeah, we had no idea. We had no idea. It was painful. It was painful because we didn't back then. We didn't have there wasn't as much communication as there is today.
Right.
Today, everything is instantaneous. Back then, it was email. We didn't have camera phones. We didn't have, there were no smartphones. I mean,
Right.
it just didn't exist.
Right. Right.
So it was a tedious process. It was a long process. Trying to figure out who was alive. There were a lot of rumors going around. This one's alive. This one's dead. This one's not dead. He's in a hospital. He wasn't. I mean, it was just there was a sheet. I had a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet with different columns. It was like known to be alive, missing, known to be dead. It was just
Awful.
Yeah, it was hard. It was hard.
I want to know about your first few days.
My first few days?
Yeah, the first few days after.
A lot of fun.
No sleep.
No, I'm kidding.
I know. No sleep.
Correct.
No sleep. And when you're in shock after no sleep, you go into like the state of like illusion and like you don't even know who you are. You don't know what is real, what is fake. Talk to me about those few first days and how you got through them.
Okay. It was let's start with this. It was about 11:30 at night that night. Everybody left the house, everything quieted down, everything was on. And my wife looks at me and she says to me, she goes, I need to be realistic. I said, okay. She goes, are you getting paid on Friday?
No. Did she really?
Yeah. And I went like, I don't know. She goes, do you need to look for a new job? My office was gone.
11 o'clock, not even the next day.
Well, neither one of us were going to sleep. Don't be ridiculous.
No, I know, but like how did she go to practical so fast?
She's very good at that. But we're both like that. We were both like that. So I didn't sleep that night. My phone rang at 3:30 in the morning. It was, believe it or not, and when the phone rang, Joyce says to me, don't answer it. It could be terrorists. I mean,
Wow.
we were very paranoid. I said,
Yes.
Joyce, don't be ridiculous. Terrorist isn't calling the house.
Right. Wow.
So I picked up the phone, and it was an Israeli radio station that was calling me because they heard that I was in the towers and that I spoke Hebrew, and they wanted to know if they could interview me.
How did they know that you survived? How did they even know?
Okay, so the first question was, I asked them, I said, how did you get my
Right.
number? They go, oh, we got it from your mom. I go, you got it from my mom? He goes, yeah. Can we interview you? I said, it's 3:30 in the morning. They go, well, not now, but can we call you like like at 6? And I said, I go to synagogue, okay, at 6. So if you want, call me back at 5:30. They go, okay. And they called me back at 5:30 to interview me. And they interviewed me. But before that, so right after we hung up the phone, first thing I did was I picked up the phone and I called my mother. And I said, Mom, did you give some guy from a radio station, Israeli radio station, my number? She goes, yeah. I go, what? Sheila Harris's son works with this guy in the radio station. And he asked Sheila if she knew anybody who was in the trade center who spoke Hebrew. And Sheila said, I don't. But Sarah Schonbrun's son, I think, works in the trade center. Why don't you call his mom? So they called my mother, and my mother said, yeah, I'll give you the phone number. She says, but don't call now because it's the middle of the night. So you got to wait until the morning.
And they're Israeli, so they didn't.
I went, Mom, the guy's sitting on the biggest story of the century, and you think he's not going to call me? She goes, well, I told him not to. So the phone, so that was that part, right? The next morning, my kids went to school. My wife went to work.
How?
Why? School was open.
Did it really go on?
Life went on. Yeah. Schools were open. My kids went to school. My wife went to work. A lot of people went to work.
Right. You didn't sleep.
I didn't sleep for a month. When I got up in the morning, right? Everybody left. Daddy, okay? Ari, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine.
And first of all, Ari, you're Mr. working 15 hours a day. And here everybody's going, and Ari doesn't have a computer at home to tap into. There's no office to go. There's no one to call to ask what needs to be done. What does Ari do all day?
Right. So after I finish praying, I put the TV on. I have nothing else to do, right? And what's on the TV? The tower's collapsing over and over and over again.
You keep on seeing
it. And I couldn't deal with it.
Right.
Now, when I woke up in the morning, I had a very bad smoky taste in my mouth. So I called my doctor, all right, because I wanted to be checked out. And this was really funny. You talk about humanity. I called up, and the nurse picks up, and I said, hi, my name is Ari Schonbrun. I need to see Dr. Marshall. She goes, okay, can you come in next Tuesday at 8? I said, listen, lady, I was in the trade center yesterday. I got a smoky taste in my mouth, okay? I need to see the doctor. She goes, hold on. She comes back. Can you be here at 11? Thank God, he checked me out. My lungs were fine. He said it was residual smoke.
Right.
But I called my boss that night, and I said, John.
Wait, he was alive?
He was alive. Not the CFO, but one of the other guys that I worked with.
How did you find out?
There were calls being made. You have to remember, back then we had emergency calling. Like I had a list of people, right? If there was an emergency like this was, I had a list of people that was my job to call them and let them know what's going on or find out, what they know or we know.
So there's protocol. There was
It was a call list. Yeah. Every person had a call list, had a little card in my wallet with all the names and all the phone numbers of, in case something happens. So I was calling all the people. One of the people I called, well, I had my boss's number anyway. So I called up and he was home. I said, what's going on? Where are we working? He goes, well, we have a disaster recovery site in Rochelle Park, New Jersey, but it's very crowded. There's not a lot of space, whatever. Don't come in. I said, John, you don't understand. I need to come in. I need to come to work.
You needed to distract yourself.
He said, okay, so come in.
He's the CEO?
It was one of those people that ran the accounting department. I ran the accounts receivables group. He said, so come in. So the next day I went to work.
And the roads were open? I thought tunnels and bridges were closed for weeks.
No. I went to where I got to Rochelle Park. It took a long time. It took me 3 hours to get there, but I got there.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, we were sitting on folding tables and folding chairs. They jerry-rigged some phones. It was like
computers.
Catch as catch can. We didn't I don't know that we had computers. I don't remember us having computers at that point. I do remember that one of the guys there took out a big oak tag, big piece of oak tag. Remember, he was an accountant, and he drew a big T on the oak tag. And he wrote on one side assets, the other side wrote liabilities. And we looked at that piece of paper and go like, all right, now what?
Now what? Exactly.
We had no idea.
Exactly. Now, like, where do you start? Literally ground zero. Like, how
So,
do you
right,
start
correct.
recovering? Like, how do you rebuild
Yeah,
you have a ton of broken people, because everybody's
right,
shattered and everybody's a part of a group, which majority of the group is gone, right?
right.
Majority. So you're like you're a half-limbed team. And how do you start rebuilding? And you have accounts and you have like the clients that are freaking out, right?
Right. So the good thing about Cantor was we had a lot of satellite offices around the country.
Mm-hmm.
We also had a very big office in London. We
Mm-hmm.
had like 800 people in our London office,
Mm-hmm.
and they were working on backup. And supposedly the backup was in where, if something happens in one site, it fails over to the other, right? So except that when they flipped the switch to fail over to London, nothing happened. It didn't work. So whoever was still alive was on the phone with the London office, giving them instructions on how to do, what to do. I mean, we had to train them,
Right.
and by the seat of our pants.
Wow.
And it was tough. We got space from UBS Payne Weber, who gave us space in Weehawken, New Jersey, and on Park Avenue in Manhattan. Now, Weehawken, New Jersey. Have you ever heard of Weehawken, New Jersey?
No.
Well, neither did I. I never heard of Weehawken, New Jersey. But you know what I found out? For me to get to work every day, I had to take a train, a bus, and a boat.
Oh my God. And you did it for how long?
9 months.
Wow. Why didn't you take a car?
What?
Why didn't you drive?
Why didn't I drive? Driving would have been insanity.
Like 2.5 hours each way.
Yeah, it would have been ridiculous.
Okay. Okay.
So I didn't drive.
So what was it like going back and forth, no sleep, still finding out if some of your colleagues that you knew are alive or
Right.
or like what? First of all, what's with your friend in the hospital? Like, did you find out what's with her? Like how she was recovering along the week? Like, could you get into we're in COVID mode. So we're thinking no one's allowed into the hospital. At those times, maybe you were allowed into the hospital.
Well, I didn't know what happened to her right away, but I found out. I got a call from a reporter from Newsweek magazine who called me up and said he wanted to do our story. He had been talking to Virginia. Now he wanted to talk to me. So I said, "Oh, how is she? What's going on?" So that's when I found out that she was okay, that she was alive and she was recuperating.
Mm.
And then if you look up, there is a Newsweek article. It was a special edition 2001 year-end edition of Newsweek.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got our story in it. It followed the lives of like 4 people.
Wow.
And Virginia and I, like 4 sets of people, and Virginia and I were one of those sets of people. So
wow.
That was pretty cool. I made Newsweek magazine. I even got my picture in there.
That's very cool.
Yeah. Anyway.
So Virginia's alive and well now.
Virginia's alive and well. Yeah, we became good friends.
Was there like a forgiveness process that went on, like a reflection forgiveness once, like putting everything aside?
Didn't need to do that.
It melted away in the fire naturally.
Basically.
There was no conversation about it.
None at all.
No going back. No, none of that.
No. What she did tell me was, one of the things she did tell me was that when she did the audit on my department, she was ordered by her boss to find whatever she could find on me, because it seemed that I had ticked somebody off with something and they wanted me out. And so he told her, "You find whatever you can on him." And that's why she gave me such a rough time. She says, "But Ari, I'm telling you, when I went to report back, I told him, this guy did nothing wrong. He is straight as an arrow. There is nothing, you can't fire him."
Right. Wow. What was it like that moment deciding, like, did your emotions even flare up about how angry you were at her?
No.
It just, there was no past history. It was life and death, surviving humans. Emotions are out the window, not even there.
Correct.
Wow. It just shows the power of our mind, how it could just forget something that probably consumed both of you for a while beforehand.
A long time.
right? Consumed you, and suddenly it disappears. It's
Right.
just not an option to address it.
Right.
That's amazing. So for you said you didn't sleep for a month.
Right. I was living on Ambien.
Do you know what was replaying in your mind? Do you remember?
It was just, I couldn't sleep. It was very difficult. It was a very emotional time. Well, see, one of the things that I had to do, we had a corporate card program, an American Express corporate card program in the firm where everybody got a corporate card so you can, charge your expenses so you wouldn't have to put it on your personal card, right? So we had like 960 cards out there. What we needed to do now was figure out who's alive and who's dead,
To cancel.
who's got what kind of a balance on the credit card,
Oh.
who's paying that balance, who's going to eat that balance. Every time we went through an account, it was like,
Heartbreaking.
yeah, you see the guy in front of you, you see the gal in front of you.
Right. And you're dealing with technical stuff of money, which sounds meaningless when the guy is dead.
Yeah, basically.
And it's such a painful process to go through.
I'll tell you something that I haven't really told anybody. Maybe I did one or two people, I don't remember. But it was 2 years later, maybe 3 years later, and I get a thing in the mail from American Express addressed to the guy who used to work for me.
Oh my God. And he died?
And it was a renewal of his American Express card. And I called up American Express and I laced into them. I said, are you kidding me? I need to live through this again because you guys are a bunch of idiots. How do you send out a renewal card for a guy who's dead, who died on 9/11? I said, I spent months and months and months going through who was alive, who was dead. We spent so much time getting through this. Now, all of a sudden, I needed that. I was so ticked. They couldn't stop apologizing.
Right. It's those little reminders that there's no way to know how it's going to flare up the memory of that day.
Correct.
So do you wake up every morning ever since then and say, wow, I survived. I literally survived. Like, why me? What's my mission? There's a reason why God chose to save me and Virginia. There's a reason. Like, how did your life change from then?
Today's episode is sponsored by emotionallysensitive.com. Are you struggling with overwhelming intense emotions? Check out emotionallysensitive.com's online DBT skills course today. Again, that's emotionallysensitive.com.
So I will tell you, and I tell this to people and they laugh at me, all right? I was the same guy on Wednesday that I was on Tuesday, minus 658 friends and coworkers. But nothing had changed for me. I was the same person. What happened was, as I started to tell my story, it started to sink in.
Because you were in shock.
The magnitude of what had happened, and the fact that I got out of there, the fact that I was plucked from a burning, collapsing building and given a second chance, right, was literally to me something like God said to me, I'm giving you a second chance. What are you going to do with it? And that's when I made the decision that I was going to start making changes in my life. Studying Talmud more. My prayers were much better than they had been. The biggest thing was my temper. I had a very, very bad temper. I was one of those yellers, one of those screamers.
Maybe that's why they wanted to fire you.
And I said, I'm gonna keep it in check. I'm not gonna do that. The other thing I did was
Wait, back up. It's not something that you could do overnight. It's a temper is a temper. It's something that you have to work on for years and years and years to take down 2% of your temper. And after 5 years, another 2%. It's not something you're like, okay, today I'm not going to be angry anymore.
No. First of all, I disagree.
Okay. So tell me, because I'm interested, because I think it's very important for people to understand, because it's a part of your reaction to things, and reactions are emotions. So you can't just flip your emotions and say, oh, today I'm going to be very kind and no temper and
okay, so I didn't say no temper, but I scaled it back. In other words, I used to fly off the handle at the drop of a hat. You look at me wrong, I'm yelling and screaming. It was those things that stopped or that I took control over. Remember, you should understand, and I'm sure you understand this, all right? You have no control over what happens to you.
Right.
but you do have control over your reaction to what happens. All right.
That's when you are aware of that. Most people that have a temper are not aware and they react because they're not connected.
Okay. But when you're almost dead and you were brought back to life, okay, you can make that. Yeah. For me, anyway.
So that was your wake up. So so you're like, everything was suddenly put into proportion right away, right away. You were kinder you cut slack. You're like, okay, let it
Right.
go. I'm alive. It's not a
Right.
big deal. It's just not a big deal. I'm alive. I got a chance. Be nice, be kind.
The other thing I forgot to tell you was I was very, very paranoid, okay, for a while, where in the morning when I had to go to work, I used to open my front door, just barely, stick my head out, look up and down the block to see if anybody was there, if anybody was suspicious, anything going on before I walked out of my house.
For years.
It wasn't years, it was months. It was for months that I did that.
That you thought it was terrorist.
Yeah, I at one point in time, it was really funny because I thought that when I got out of the building and I managed to get to the hospital, and then I went to this guy's apartment, I called my wife from his apartment to let her know that I was okay, and I couldn't get through. There was trouble on the lines. There was, I kept getting a fast busy, and I was so paranoid. I thought to myself, you know what? They missed me at the Trade Center. I think they traced me over here, and they're going to get me over here.
Wow.
It's just.
Wow.
It was crazy. It was crazy stuff.
And definitely not the kind of person you were before. It's like you were more like, I got this. No one can hurt me. I'm good. So you really had like a switch go off that day and you changed.
Right. The other thing that happened was that, and this goes towards purpose, right? Because I used to, right after it happened, I would meet people all the time. And they say, that was a miracle. You got out, you have a mission. And I go, yeah, okay, what is it? They go, I don't know, but you have a mission. And everybody I met was telling me about this mission. So one guy finally says, you got a mission. Like, what?
You didn't say, why did God save me? There must be a big.
Yeah, I did. But what was my mission? You have a mission. Okay, great. What is my mission? Okay. And they go, I don't know. Well, then stop telling me I have a mission.
So it was frustrating you because you didn't know what the mission was. Like you wanted to find something, but you had no idea. Like, what is my mission?
Right. And then I found out what my mission was. And that was when Shiffy Fox calls me up and says, can you come and speak at the Yeshiva Rockaway dinner? We're doing a 9/11 thing. And then the next day, the dean of the school calls me up and says he wants me to present to the boys because they loved what I had to say. I said, oh, I think this is my calling. To tell my story, to let the world know there is a God, all right, that he saved me, he gave me a second chance, and we need to make some changes in our lives in general, okay? I point to some specifics, point to generalizations, but I firmly believe that was my mission, and that's what I started to do. And I did it. It wasn't easy because I still worked for a living, so I had to do everything in my spare time. Mm-hmm. And the funniest thing, I'll never forget, I got a call from a guy in Mexico, and he wanted me to come and speak in Mexico. I worked in the bond market, fixed income group. Fixed income group was closed. Even though the stock market was open on Columbus Day, the fixed income group was closed. So I didn't have work on Columbus Day, which was a Monday. So I arranged it with the guy that I would come on that Monday to speak. So I caught a 1 a.m. flight out of Kennedy, Mexico City. Oh. We went to synagogue. All right. We landed at 5:30. Somebody picked me up, went to synagogue, had breakfast, freshened up, went to speak at a school at 9, went to another school at 11, went to a third school at 1, ate lunch at 3:30, went back to the house where we were staying, and I took a nap until about 5:36 maybe. Got up, got dressed, showered, got dressed, went to a community center, spoke there at 8:30, got to the airport at 11 p.m. to catch a 12 a.m. flight.
They milked you well.
Was back in New York at 7 o'clock, went to shul, and then I went to work.
Oh my God. Talk about a mission, literally a mission. So what do you think was like the common message that you wanted to leave each speech over there? Like what was the
common message is very, very simple. Okay. We live in a world today that is crazy. And today it's crazier than ever. And even back then, it was with terrorism and with all the stuff going on in the world, it was just really, really bad. And we needed to change that. We need to make some changes in the world. But before you can change the world, you've got to change yourself. You got to start with yourself. You can't change the world unless you yourself have to do that change first. It also depended upon the audience that I was talking to, right? Because I did a lot of talking to secular Jews. And when I talk to secular Jews who don't know that much, I talk to them about doing a mitzvah, doing one good deed, whatever it may be. And I always tell my audience, I don't care what it is, pick one, because if you tell people they need to do 613, they get really scared.
Yeah.
But if you say, just pick one.
Right.
All right. And if you're having a trouble with deciding which one, I said, your local rabbi, he'll help you.
Right.
And because usually I was invited by an Orthodox rabbi to address, right? So it was Eish Torah or Chabad, whatever. And I would say, just pick one, right? And people would come up to me afterwards because, I made a decision. I'm going to light candles every Friday night. Wow. One guy told me he's going to make Kiddush every Friday, So it was these things.
Wow.
That I and I knew I was doing the right thing when one of my talks, somebody came up to me after the talk and said, you've changed my life.
Wow.
How powerful is that?
Wow.
And I think to myself, I have the power to change somebody's life. Are you kidding me? I don't want that responsibility, but
wow.
This is what God had in store for me.
Tell me about two things that you were different. Your temper. What was the other one?
I stopped cursing.
Till today?
Till today.
A clean mouth.
Yep.
Completely?
Completely.
Overnight?
No, I told you, it didn't happen overnight. It happened over a period of several months.
No, but I'm saying then it went cold to, like you said, okay, I'm going to decide, and that's it. Never went back.
Correct.
It wasn't like, okay, first 5%, 10%, 20%.
No, this is
it
cold
was
turkey.
You were a Kabbalah, like a decision,
yeah.
and you stuck. And why'd you choose that? I'm curious to know why.
Because we learn about, the Chavetz Chaim always talks about, Shmirat HaLashon. It's just, it's not a nice thing to do, and I worked on Wall Street, all right? And these guys are worse than drunken sailors.
Right.
The stuff that comes out of their mouths is ridiculous, right?
There's a lot of stress and anxiety, and that's how they release it.
When I started paying attention to that, I said, that's not who I want to be. And here's the amazing part, okay? While I was still working, if there was ever a meeting going on that I was invited to, whether it was in my office or in a conference room, whatever, if people saw me, nobody in that meeting would curse.
They knew? How did they know?
Because they all knew. They all knew Ari Schonbrun doesn't curse.
Oh, wow.
And if somebody did, by accident, blurt out a four-letter word, they would apologize. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. So because I made a decision, look at the effect it had on the people around me.
I have chills. Growing up in Israel, talking about the corporate world, I grew up very Orthodox, very, very, very Haredi Orthodox.
Yeah, where?
In Har Nof.
Oh, okay.
And I went to Beis Yaakov, very, very Orthodox, okay? And then I go to the corporate world, and then I hear Orthodox, very, very Orthodox people cursing. And I'm like, what is going on? What is going on? By the time I got married, I'm embarrassed to say it was really bad. It was really bad. And Ari did that. Ari did the opposite. He went to Israel. He said he could have cursed like no one could. Like he had an art, he says, the art of cursing. Then he went to Israel for yeshiva. And that was something that he took upon himself, and he never went back. Never. I married to him almost 20 years. Almost 20 years. And I always used to say, like, you can't even say, he said, I won't. It's not attractive to him anymore. It just won't. And it was a challenge for me to undo the damage that was done for me in the corporate world in Israel. And also the words are different. Like the meaning of the words everything is so different. But he taught me the power. He always says the words have power. Use them for the good. Use them for the good. Use them for the good. That's beautiful. Did your kids and your wife see a difference in you right away? Amazing. Yeah. So are you happy you left the corporate world and you're no longer there?
Yeah, I am.
Do you feel free?
Yeah.
So that's another twist to it, that if not for 9/11, you would probably still be there.
I don't know. If not for 9/11, I might have left the firm earlier.
But maybe you would have gone to a different firm.
Perhaps.
You would stay in the corporate. You would probably stay in the.
No way to know.
Do you still wake up with like sounds, like thoughts Like, do you find yourself in that, or you're ready? Like it's 20 years. It's it's like far enough.
No, it'll never be far enough. Okay. One of the things that I did realize way back when was I get very frightened over loud noises.
Mm.
If I'm driving and all of a sudden somebody like honks like really loud, or somebody drops something, or I jump.
Right.
Now that is to this day.
And it's nothing that you would want to take care of, like to say, you know what, maybe I should go to like trauma therapy to.
With all due respect, no.
No. Yeah, you don't look like the guy that would do that.
No.
You rather live with it and learn to live with it and then deal with it.
Right.
Then deal with
Right.
it. Okay. So what's a message that you can leave the audience besides taking a good deed? Like about valuing their life, and you talk about the bricks. How do we notice the bricks when the bricks is really there? Like, how do we not say, oh my God, why me? How do we turn it around? Like, what do you tell your audience?
I basically tell my audience that, like I said to you before, the world is crazy, and today it's worse than it's ever been, I think, and we really need to make some changes, but the change has to come within you first. I'm really sorry, but you have to do that. You have to make the change and figure out, like I stopped cursing, all right? So you have to understand something. A good deed begets a good deed. And I'm going to end with this because I love this analogy.
It's appropriate for when we are in like right before Rosh Hashanah.
Right. But what I'll say is like this. Let's say we were in a big room, right? And everybody in the room was holding a candle, but none of the candles were lit. And I was holding my candle, right? And my candle is lit. And now I walk over to person number one and I light their candle. Is my candle diminished in any way? No. But is there twice as much light? Yes.
Beautiful.
Just, it's not great, but they're all right. But then the next person lights from them. The next person lights from them. And the next person lights. And you light. Before you know it, guess what you've done? You've lit up a room.
Beautiful.
Because everybody made a decision.
Beautiful.
That is going to affect. So you light up a room, and then you light up a town, and then you light up a city, and then you light up a country, and then you light up the world.
But it has to start with your own flame. If you don't have it, you can't. That is beautiful. That is beautiful, that without your own spark, and it could start with a spark. It doesn't even need a flame. Spark.
Correct.
And then that is beautiful that you have to start, and you don't, and start small, because if you go too big, you're never going to start. Right?
Oh, yeah. I always thought, I says, it's like one of the reasons the change stuck with me was because it wasn't like overnight. Very often, somebody has a life-altering experience, and the first thing they do is they go, I'm going to go, sit on top of a mountain. I'm going to become a monk, and I'm going to, spiritual, blah, blah. And then 2 days later, they're right back to where they started from.
Right.
Why is that? It's the same thing with dieting, same thing with New Year's resolutions. It's all the same thing. Right. Why is that?
Right.
Because it has to come slow.
Right.
It has to come a little bit at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I tell people, you want to make some changes in your life. Okay. Make one small change every single day. It could be minuscule, but make the change, because at the end of the year, you've done 365 things to make yourself better.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your story, your whispers and your bricks, literally. And I hope people really start their own flame in order to really ignite the world. That's a beautiful, beautiful analogy. I like that a lot. Thank you for sharing with us, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening till the end. We highly appreciate all of our listeners. And Mental Health Together is better. You being here means a tremendous amount to us. If you enjoyed this episode and you would like some extra boost of information and inspiration that is not on the podcast, you can go to our website, hopetorecharge.com. There's some premium content that for the cost of a cup of coffee, you can download some amazing information that will help you, a tool that will guide you through life. So don't skip a beat. Don't hesitate. Go to hopetorecharge.com and see what other offerings we have there for your mental health well-being. Thank you for joining us. And remember, if you enjoyed this and you want to say thank you, the best way of gratitude will be by you leaving a review or a comment or sharing this with a loved one. There is no greater form of gratitude for us. Thank you. Bye till next time.